Hi everybody and welcome to the channel. So in today's video I wanted to talk about how to make a schedule in order to improve your art. Personally, I know that I've not been doing art for as long as many other art YouTubers, but I improved quite fast and doing that by self-learning as well. I started doing makeup 3 years ago and I started drawing less than a year ago. But with both mediums, I reached a level where I'm comfortable and I reached that level pretty quickly. One of the way I've been able to improve that quickly is by making a schedule. Like many other things in life, when you want to improve, one of the biggest challenge is time management, especially if you have a full-time job or if you're studying full-time. So you kind of already know if you don't dedicate time to your craft, you'll not be able to improve, and I just wanted to share some tips to help to plan things up and be more efficient with the time you have. So before jumping into the subject, I just want to talk about the drawing I'm doing in this video. So I'm recreating a piece of artwork from a Magic the Gathering card. It is Demilich from the latest set Adventure of the Forgotten Realms. Yes, I am still in the phase of replicating art in my own style and learning and trying to improve. So by replicating art, I'm still trying to improve my technique, notice other things, try to experiment, and that's pretty much one of the way that I learn. So that being said, let's talk about how I made my schedule. One of the first things to consider when trying to make a schedule is to fix an objective to make an art piece for a given amount of time. Personally, what worked the best for me is to make a piece of art every week. It can be different depending on your medium. For certain medium, it can be making a piece every 2 weeks or making a piece every month. I also heard or read on social media some people suggesting doing art piece every day. Personally, I think that trying to complete a piece of artwork every day is a little too much. You can burn yourself pretty quickly by doing that, or at least you're more at risk of burning yourself. But despite that, even if you keep the objective of making one piece per week, you can still work toward that piece or toward that goal also on a daily basis. It's also very good as a motivation to get the habit of showing it to someone at a given amount of time. Personally, what really pushed me on that is posting my art on social media. Because I wanted to have new content to post every week, it was a good motivation to create artwork every week as well. Maybe posting on social media is not your thing, maybe you're a little too shy and you're not at ease with that, but you can find other ways too. Maybe you can just develop the habit of showing it to a friend or family at a given time in the week. Let's say on Sunday evening, you just showed a piece of artwork you worked on this week to your parents or to your friends. So it can be an alternative if you don't want to post on social media. But keeping that habit of showing it can be a very good motivation. You can also see it as a challenge. Maybe you can do something like the 50 weeks of art and trying to do 50 pieces during the year. It's still another way to produce a number of art pieces in a given amount of time. Let's be real, we all know that we need to do art in order to improve, but it can be hard. Learning art can be frustrating, it can be discouraging, and sometimes, even if you want to improve, you have a hard time to motivate yourself to do it, just to sit at your desk and start. But with a schedule, what you want to do is to give yourself less excuses not to do art. You want to make it an habit. You want to make it part of your routine, something that you just do, not mindlessly, but in such an habit that you stop questioning yourself as much. You do it because you just got the habit of doing it. It's a way to kind of reduce that self-doubt or those kind of anxiety that you can have while starting an art piece. Making a schedule help to create some support, to get a structure that can prevent, or at least to help to deal with those kind of bad feeling or that starting anxiety. Personally, that's what I did, and that's kind of how I noticed that when I learned with makeup. When I started with makeup, I didn't have a schedule for the first year. Basically from the time I got my makeup kit to the time I started my YouTube channel. So basically, not long after I got my kit during the holidays, I could do 2 or 3 makeups per week, which was a lot, and I saw kind of an improvement at the time. But then I could stop for 2 months and just do makeup sporadically. At the time, it was sometimes just when I was thinking about it, you know. It was such not an habit that I could do it also at very different moment of the week. Sometime I could be working it like on a Tuesday evening that I was planning and dedicating. Sometime it was just because I got bored like on a Sunday evening and I was just finishing my makeup pretty late just before going to bed. But I didn't have any structure, and my progress was also very hard to see. I was kind of seeing it in the holidays because I was doing more art pieces, more makeups at the time, but other than that, my improvement was really random. I really started to improve when I got the habit of making at least 1 makeup per week. And it was when I started my YouTube channel. As I said, I wanted to create content every week and also to post on my Instagram. So when I really started at the beginning, I was doing 2 makeup per week, which was quite challenging, to be honest. Basically doing 1 makeup on Saturday afternoon and doing another one on Sunday afternoon, and taking the time on the evening of the weekdays to edit my picture, edit my videos and everything in order to post like at first I was trying to post on Instagram 5 days a week, but other than that, at least to be able to post my video on Friday. So that was the way for me that I got that habit of creating at least 1 piece of art per week, and where my motivation was from social media. The second point about making a schedule is trying to plan for a dedicated block of time during the week and plan the rest to be ready for that dedicated time. Personally, I think you should try to aim for a part of the day to fully work on your craft, like a block of 3 or 4 hours, dedicating something like a Friday evening, a Saturday morning, or a Sunday afternoon, something like that. It is better to spend like 4 hours in a row than 4 blocks of 1 hour. Basically, you don't necessarily notice it that much, but each time you kind of make a setup. It can be really stupid things, like just taking your pencil out of your drawers, or opening your computer and finding the right soundtrack to inspire you, or things like that. But if each time you spend like 5 or 10 minutes doing so, if you do that 4 times, let's say 5 minutes, instead of doing it only 1 time, it's still 15 minutes that you should have dedicated to your art, but instead you're just spent on building your setup. So dedicated a block of time, if possible, obviously, I think it is a better option. Also, plan things to be ready for your dedicated block of time. You can do a little bit of other things every day. Basically, when, let's say for me it's on Saturday afternoon. So basically what I want to do is plan things up during the week so that when Saturday afternoon comes, I'm ready to really work and focus on my art. Basically, you have to identify the preliminary work that you need to do before reaching that dedicated block of time. So I will give some example with the two mediums I'm working with. So with makeup, those preliminary tasks, I first need to find a suitable character to do. Obviously, it is quite challenging because there's a lot of characters that I just cannot do. Let's say even if there's a franchise that I really love, I know that, for instance, dragons would be kind of impossible for me. Their face is too long, and trying to draw it on my face will rarely give good result. So sometimes just thinking about a character can be quite challenging. And sometimes I need to also explore new franchises. As I said in other videos, after I've done like 150 characters, pretty much all the character that I could do from the franchise that I know, I already did them. So sometimes I need to spend more time exploring new franchises and universes to find new characters. Then once I decided which character I want to do, another preliminary step is to find good reference pictures of the character that I want to do. Obviously I just Google stuff, but just trying to find really good high definition picture can be quite time consuming. Then once I got them, I edit the picture to fit them in one file. So I adjust the brightness, the contrast and the saturation to make it easier, and I all merge them in one file so that it's easier to see on my computer. With drawing, I do have other type of preliminary steps. Yet again, one of the first one is to find the subject and look at reference pictures. Then I plan some time to draw the sketch. Then personally, I trace my own sketches to just keep the important lines. On that tracing, I get rid of all the shading that I could have done just to give me an idea or a guide for the final product. But I just keep the important lines. And once it's done, I choose the color and check how they blend together, and I make gradient. Basically, I take my Copic markers, I look at how I try to make a gradient of colors, I look how they blend together, I try to find the best combination so that when it's time to draw, I already have all my color palettes ready. Also, it can be good as a preliminary step to plan some time to look for tutorials. It can be general and not only about your medium. If I take an example with body painting, with makeup, there's not that much tutorial about body painting in particular. I remember when I did a makeup of Ghost Rider, what I wanted to improve with that makeup was making flames. But if I looked at how to do flame with makeup or with body paint, I don't think I ever found a result on that. Instead, I found tutorial on how to do it with oil painting, how to do it with coloring pencil, how to do it with a hairbrush, like doing it for cars or motorcycles. So even if it was not on my medium, sometimes dedicating also time to look for things that you know that will be more challenging for your piece or your project can be a good thing. And as I said, it doesn't have to be on your medium to give you ideas or to give you inspiration on things you want to experiment with. If you don't have to be as scheduled for those preliminary steps. You can just at least aim to having it done at the end of one day. For instance, just about thinking about the character you want to do, you don't necessarily have to dedicate like 1 hour of your time every Monday to do that. It's the kind of thing that I was doing, like waiting for the bus or sometime during my lunch break when I was taking a walk or something. There's some preliminary step that my goal was just to say, at least for Wednesday, I want to have that sorted out so I can do the other steps. So for some preliminary steps, you can try to do it to really dedicate blocks of time also on that during the week. But for some other preliminary step, you don't necessarily need to. I would say for drawing, like doing my sketch, tracing, finding my colors, I was having that pretty much scheduled every every evening of the weekdays, trying to dedicate like 1 hour after dinner. But with makeup, I wasn't as strict, as I said. And yeah, it's just trying to find the moments to dedicate to your art, to get that structure, and it will make things easier as well. Sometimes I have to say I do work on my piece of art more than in just one block. Sometimes it happens that, especially with drawing, since it takes more time, or in fact I should say with makeup, I have to do it in one block. I cannot just like say, oh, I'm tired, I'm gonna continue tomorrow. I cannot sleep with my makeup on. But with drawing, it happened that sometimes my dedicated block of time was just not enough. So sometimes I just then schedule, I sometimes have more than one block of time dedicated. Like for drawing, maybe I'll aim for Saturday afternoon, and if it's not completed, then I will look for Sunday afternoon. So I also have some buffer plan if the original block of time was not enough. But yet, trying to dedicate those blocks, identifying the preliminary tasks you have to do before that dedicated block of time, and also trying to separate that into smaller steps, smaller tasks, and trying to not necessarily be as strict, but at least putting some deadlines for those tasks can help you to get really organized and to be more efficient for the time that you will dedicate to your craft, and it will help you to improve. Another thing to consider when making your schedule is try to fix a learning objective for your piece of art. Try to find one aspect that you want to improve, like try to have an improvement goal for the piece of art you're making for that period of time. Maybe also you can plan time in your schedule for looking for tutorials. Maybe it can be like, I'm doing my art piece mostly on the weekend, so you may spend like 30 or 1 hour on Thursday evening to look for tutorials that may be helpful for your art piece later on. For these learning objectives, it can be many different things. It can be a fundamental, or it can also be just something to experiment, like trying new techniques and materials. It can be something really more technical, or it can be something more creative and focused on imagination. Like for the technical aspect, it can be that you want to improve the way you're drawing water realistically, so you decide to recreate an existing piece of art, like a landscape with a lot of water, in order to improve the way you do water in a more realistic way. For imagination, or more the creative aspect, it can be that you will try to do original characters, or doing portrait of original character, but really trying to make more distinct physical features to get rid of the same face syndrome that you may have. So really trying to make characters that look really different from one another in order to overcome one of the weaknesses that you have identified. It can also be just to test and get more familiar with some materials and equipment. Sometime with material that you just bought, or sometime material or equipment that you had for a long time, but that you never really use. Just recreating pieces of art is not enough to improve. You do need to have a reason to make your piece of art. You can just recreate a lot of different things. Yes, you will learn some of those aspects along the way, but if you're doing it mindfully, by having an objective and a learning objective that you really, a point that you want to improve, then you will improve obviously way faster. It's like doing art more consciously, or really more focusing on improvement than just focusing on recreating pieces, you know? So here's some examples of objectives that I may give myself when I'm doing those pieces of art, as much with makeup or with drawing. Sometimes, once I was trying to make like a robot face and focusing more on perspectives or on some fundamentals. I also love sometimes just to do like, my objective this week is just to do an original character and trying not to get too influenced by a character that I already know. Other time it was just doing something with eye contrast, because I tend to lack of contrast usually. So it's, for me, I know that it's something that I need to focus on, that I put my pieces not dark enough sometime, that I'm afraid of using darker colors, so it can also be a learning objective. It have been quite a lot actually. Doing something with flames to learn how to recreate flames, that's something that I did. Like, I did a lot of makeups with flames, with characters that have flames on top of their head, like Demilich from Zelda Skyward Sword or Ghost Rider. So, yeah, I just wanted to learn how to do flames. And sometimes it's doing just something with mostly green, because I have a lot of greens shade that I want to try out. This is especially true with makeup, because if I buy a new eyeshadow palette, obviously I want to try it out and know like how the eyeshadows are working, how pigmented they are, what is the consistency, what is the finish, how it will look on pictures. And sometimes with marker, it's just that sometimes I have colors marker that I bought but I literally never used. So sometimes it's just that I want to explore, and maybe I will find combination or just discover color that I thought would be bad but that in the end are really helpful. One of those cases was with Copic marker. I had a very desaturated pink that I didn't know what to do with it, and I was like, I want to find a usage for this one. And I realized that it's actually super good to do rotten stuff. Like if I want to do like rotting flesh, using that tone was actually pretty good. For those who know about Copic marker, I'm talking about shade E70, Ash Rose. But yeah, I wouldn't have discovered it if I hadn't tried it. So also with your objectives, it's good to think about it, but you can also keep a backlog of objectives and save ideas for later. Because sometimes finding an objective can be hard, but sometimes you're also in a creative moment or you get inspired and think about a lot of objectives. So yeah, you can also keep a backlog of your ideas. On the longer term planning for your schedule, I also suggest try to vary your topics and objectives from piece to pieces to avoid focusing too much and for too long on one aspect. The main reason is that it can kind of sometimes create a comfort zone that you may get some trouble getting out of. For me personally, especially with makeup, sometimes I discover a new franchise and I want to do a lot of character from that franchise, but I try to not do more than 3 characters from that franchise in a row. Also, I have to admit that since I'm posting on social media, I don't want to make my followers and subscribers bored, especially if it's a topic or a universe that they don't like. But also, let's say I really love to do skull, and that's something that I kind of see with makeup. Skulls are really fun to do, but there are some people who seem to only do skulls. And yes, they are fun to do, and I enjoy doing skulls, but at the same time, you don't necessarily learn that much perspectives with it. There's a lot of fun. Yes, you do learn anatomy, but there's other fundamentals that you won't learn if you're only doing skulls. So trying to vary the type of objectives and the type of art pieces that you do will also help you to improve. Because if you get too much in your comfort zone, you will not try to improve your weaknesses. So these are other things to consider for your schedule. Another aspect that I want to talk about regarding making a schedule is, I don't want to say it's a controversial one, but I think it's one that is often overlooked. And it's, don't make the schedule too hard on you. Plan time to relax and to relieve stress. Let's be honest, learning art can be stressful, frustrating, and disappointing. Maybe you just feel that you're not learning quick enough. Sometimes you go on social media and see other artists that are just so good, and you feel like crap compared to them. You just can feel discouraged. But the thing is, oftentimes, if you have a full-time job or you're studying full-time, you can get bad feelings from your full-time job and your full-time study, and then also getting bad feelings from your art, from trying to improve your art, and those can add up. Sometimes we tend to see, oh well, I'm doing art as a hobby, so it is something that will help me to relieve the stress that I get from my full-time job. But if your hobby also create anxiety or frustration or disappointment, it can add up pretty quickly. So too much of those negative emotions can lead to creative burnout. Those moments where you feel you have no inspiration, that you feel you have no motivation, that you just sit at your desk, you want to draw, but at the same time a part of yourself is really not wanting to do anything. And you kind of just procrastinate and feel guilty about it. You know, that kind of art block. Also, it can just also lead to a regular burnout. So on that, you do have to think on the impact it can have on mental health, and you need to work on prevention. For me, what I suggest is just plan some time in the week to just relax. I suggest at least 1 hour per week. It can be many different things. Be aware that also some things will just numb the stress instead of really relieving it. Like for instance, for me, if I say, oh well, I have 1 hour to relax and I spend it watching TV or playing video games, it won't be enough for me. Yes, I will not thinking about my problems and those bad feelings during that time, but as soon as I stop, they easily come back. For me at least, I know it's not enough. So it can be many different things. It can be the more obvious relaxing stuff, like doing meditation, yoga. It can also be just taking a walk outside, you know? Taking a walk outside, like early in the morning or later in the evening when things are calmer, and doing it like without your earphones out, so that you can focus on enjoying the sounds of nature, enjoying the silence. I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but honestly, if you really try it, you can find it really more relaxing. It can be taking a relaxing bath. But other than that, it can also be just to have a social activity or going to eat at a restaurant. Sometimes, especially for me, from experience, now that I work from home with distance learning, and I also do my art at home, I have to dedicate moment to get out of my home, because sometimes I can spend the whole day inside, and I feel that my apartment become a source of stress, because it's hard to distinguish like what I do here for work, for hobby, for my personal life. So sometimes I just need to get out of the house to relieve that stress, you know? It can be other things. It can also be just talking to a family member on the phone, or inviting a friend, maybe like to just take a beer or something. It's even better if you have another friend that is also an artist and that you can share your artistic struggles. Maybe especially having someone that may understand it better can really help to get those bad feelings out. I would say also sometimes you can just combine it with other things and kind of be more productive and efficient with your relaxation. What I mean by that, like an example, I'm often on my phone. Like I love to go on social media, especially on Instagram, and liking others people's posts. But being on my phone at home is really different than taking a walk to a park nearby and being on my phone while at the park outside. As I said, being in a different environment can help to reduce the stress. Maybe also you can do something more special once per month, like a day trip outside for one day, or maybe going to the spa and fully relax. You can also have a relaxation moment that can also be more extra once in a while. It's also good to spend some time for rewarding yourself. Also, obviously, don't overdo it. Don't go overindulging. But it's also really good to acknowledge your progress and to reward yourself. To say, hey, you know what? I see my improvement, and I think it's something that I want to celebrate just a bit. Sometimes it's just taking time at looking at your portfolio, looking at the pieces you were doing maybe 3 months ago, 1 year ago, and to assess and to really see the progress you made. So you also need just time and to be conscious about celebrating the small victories, you know? It can also be a way to relieve the stress and the pressure you can put on yourself to improve your art. Another thing that sometimes we don't talk about it that much, but I feel that if you start into art later in life, sometimes it's easier to put pressure on yourself. You feel like you're too late, or you have time to not to compensate, but to reach back to other people that are far ahead of you. It's okay also just to acknowledge that you will improve, but improve at your own pace, and acknowledge that this feeling can also create pressure on you. So just also acknowledging the things that can stress you out will really help you to relieve the stress and the pressure. The last point I want to talk about, I know it may sound counterintuitive or counterproductive, but I do think it's a point that needs to be addressed. See the schedule as some training wheels to get into self-discipline. It can be a very good thing to have a tight schedule, but for too long, it can be smothering. You have to be able to recognize when you improved enough and when you can start to loosen a little bit. The goal of having a schedule is to learn self-discipline and create an habit. Once you have an habit, it makes things easier. But once it's acquired, you can then learn to break the habit once in a while. Obviously, don't use it as an excuse to give up after 2 months. I'm more considering it like it can be beneficial after 1 or 2 years, when you really went into that schedule and get the habit, as I said. Consider it especially when you start reaching or getting creative fatigue, or getting a lack of inspiration, or feeling burned out. You have to consider that it's a good thing to dedicate a lot of time for your art, but it also means that it's also time that you're not dedicating on doing something else. It does have a cost, and you have to acknowledge that. So sometimes it's okay to say, okay, you know, I think I spend enough time on art for a while. I will just slow down a little bit to be able to dedicate time for other things as well. And it's okay. As I said, it needs to be done in moderation, and after you reach a certain point where you already got your habit. But I think, as I said, it's important to consider it maybe as a training wheel. Once you're good to go, you can loosen up a little bit. It can also just be to change your schedule to work on bigger project, or maybe changing your schedule to slowly learn a new medium. Also, you may consider putting your schedule on hold when you're on vacation and getting back into it later. As I said, learning art can be frustrating and disappointing, and you do need to have moments to get rid of that stress. For me, that's a mistake I did a lot of time in the past. When I had vacation, I was just, oh, you know what, I just want to stay at home and work on my art in order to improve. So I was not planning anything, I was not planning to go outside, but sometimes I was just like ending up stressed about art and getting frustration with art, especially when I was trying to make costume and I was getting frustrated by not understanding the sewing patterns, or that the fact that everything takes double the time that I planned. So at the end I was coming back from my vacation more exhausted, and then it was even harder and harder to go back into art. So it is good to take time, especially when you're on vacation, to not do art for a while, but just get back into it right after. Sometimes you also need to put it aside when you're sick. Sometimes, if you're already physically sick or mentally unwell, it's okay to take time to just recuperate, to heal a little bit. Don't be too hard on yourself on that. For me, I was also trying to keep my social activities at minimum when I was really into my schedule. I was not planning things with friends and family, I was just going when I was invited. But that was a big mistake, and when I realized that I needed to loosen my schedule a little bit I was pushing back for social activities. I was always, oh well, I'll just do it later and later. But then lockdown happened, and I couldn't just see anybody else. So sometimes you have also to consider that you need time to others aspect of your life, and it's okay to allocate time for that. So after a while, I decided to take breaks and to take the initiative to plan social activities. Also, I just now need to plan for vacation instead of just seeing it as a time to do more art. Even if I'm really motivated and I do really want to improve, you have to recognize that there's a balance to be done. It's like trying to pull on flowers to make them grow faster, you know? So you have to find your optimal speed, that the optimal amount of effort that you can put into art to see improvement. Because if you put too much, then it's not necessarily productive because you're just burning yourself out. So this is the last point about making a schedule, is to be able to recognize your boundaries and to give yourself some time to rest when you need it. But I think it's a point that is often overlooked, but is really important as well. We are now reaching the end of the video, so I hope you really enjoyed it. If so, please feel free to give a like and subscribe to the channel to see more speed drawing talk like this one, and to see also tutorials about art, mostly for my makeups and my drawings. You can also follow me on Instagram if you want to see more pictures of my makeups and my drawings, and you can find the link in the description. So I hope you really enjoyed it. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to me. I do want to share my advices, share some of the mistakes I did in the past, and I just hope that it will help other people to not do those same mistakes. So I hope to see you in another video. Bye!